Let's talk about some more questions before JJK 266 drops tomorrow night, but spoilers beware. All right, so first up, we got three questions here from Edwin, so let's go through these one at a time. The first wants me to talk about the symbolism behind Sukuna and Yuji climbing Jacob's ladder. So the first thing I want to say is if you didn't see it, I put out a video right after that chapter came out talking about all of the symbolism in Jacob's ladder and stuff. So I'm going to link that down below in the YouTube comments for you to check out. But essentially, specifically the act of Sukuna and Yuji climbing it, I think could be a cool way to represent like both of their ascension, and primarily Yuji like catching up to Sukuna, that he was able to emulate something that the King of Curses just did. I think it's a way to announce his arrival in a way. But we could go beyond that, and perhaps it is also them ascending to the afterlife, perhaps. As you all know, I think Yuji isn't making it out of this manga alive, and I also do think they will be successful in defeating Sukuna, so it could be symbolic of that. Now, whether that means that's going to happen right now in this moment in the domain, I don't know, but I do think both of them are, kind of donezo before it's all said and done. Then for your second question, it says, while in Yuji's domain, I feel like we'll see memories and flashbacks to the Heian era days, and also how he beat Gojo, is I'm assuming what this typo meant to say. So I don't know. I really, really, really hope we get some Heian era flashbacks and some more characterization of Sukuna. But I don't know if like that will necessarily be a part of whatever's happening right here. It seems like whatever this vision is of Yuji and Sukuna, traversing it across Japan was this kind of last-ditch effort for Yuji to try and give Sukuna this act of mercy, right? To get him to see the way to get him to see things the way he sees them, that there is like inherent value in life. And clearly Sukuna didn't see that. So it seems as if now they're about to throw hands, right? But that doesn't mean we still couldn't get a Heian era flashback at some point to still shed light on things. I just don't think it would be part of this same sequence, so not necessarily part of Yuji's domain, like the effects of it, at least, if that makes sense. And then how he beat Gojo, if that is what you meant, I think we pretty much know that now. So I'll message you back and you can let me know if you meant something else here. But we know it was the binding vows to get the world cutting slash off without requirements, and it essentially caught Gojo off guard. So I don't imagine that we'll get even more clarity on that moment unless it's from Gojo's side of things. But then in that point, I think any information we find out would be more Gojo leaning as opposed to Sukuna leaning. And then finally, why didn't Shoko or even Yuta heal Hana's arm? And simply, they aren't capable of it. RCT is much less effective when you are healing somebody else with it. And thus far, healing somebody else's limb or some type of injury to that degree has been beyond the capability of someone else's RCT. Like, never in the series have we seen someone heal somebody else to that extent. People have only been able to regrow their own limbs with RCT because, again, your own RCT is much more potent. So they just simply couldn't. Next up, we've got a bit of a longer one here, so y'all pause to check out the entire thing, but essentially what DB is talking about is how Mai created a replica of the Soul Split Katana to give to Maki in her final moments. And what if instead she had created the inverted Spear of Heaven to give to Maki as well? Wouldn't that have been better against Sukuna, and couldn't they have basically made short work of him had that been the case? I believe he even specifically says that the inverted Spear of Heaven is definitely a trump card against Sukuna's soul napping tricks. So in my opinion, I don't know if it would have really been an instant win card like that, because the inverted Spear of Heaven basically negates curse techniques, right? So I don't think it would have been any more effective a weapon against Sukuna himself. And in fact, the Soul Split Katana, I think maybe is the more lethal weapon against him, considering it, negates durability and can damage the soul itself. Now, they probably didn't really have an understanding of the fact that Sukuna would be able to soul RCT, so maybe that changes things a little bit, but still, the inverted spear, yeah, you could maybe use it to block some of his cleaves and dismantles, but personally, I don't think it would be effective against the world cutting slash, considering that cuts existence itself, so I don't even think the inverted spear would be able to stop it. But in terms of lethality against Sukuna, I think it's pretty much just a normal dagger. Now, If you use it against the fingers themselves, the cursed objects, that's where I think it would be very effective against him, because the binding vow or jujutsu on those fingers that make them indestructible, I do believe the inverted spear of heaven would be able to penetrate that and bypass that, break it down, destroy the fingers. So if that's what you mean, then I'm with you. But I really just don't think at that point in the story they really had enough agency in that regard to be able to do anything about it. Maybe they could have gotten like a few of the last fingers and destroyed them, but we do know, presumably, that Gojo was intentionally keeping one safe so that Yuji would, have a stay of his execution. So at the very least, I don't think they would have wanted to fully destroy all of the fingers they had in their arsenal. But again, as far as like literally walking up to Heian era Sukuna and using this instead of the Soul Split Katana, I really don't think it's better, and in fact might be worse. Next up, I got this from Yasser, who starts by saying that my videos were the motivation for him to start the manga after having been an anime only. And I gotta say, this is one of my favorite comments to get, so I hope you've been enjoying the manga, man, and thank you for the kind words. But his question was, could Mahoraga adapt to an opponent's cursed energy? Because wouldn't that be a more comprehensive adaptation instead of just focusing on specific attacks? Instead of having to adapt to blue, red, and purple, if you just adapt to Gojo's cursed energy, then you're going to be good against all of those things. And you're 100% right. So I think ultimately this comes down to that just being too powerful and kind of writing yourself into a corner if that's how Mahoraga worked. Because if you didn't kill him in like the first 10 seconds, he's going to be immune to everything you do, right? It would be similar to like saying, I just adapt to taking damage, regardless of the form it takes. Whether you're using cursed energy, whether you're using an AK-47, I adapt to it. So I think that's why it doesn't work that way. It would just be too strong, but you're absolutely right. That would be the much better adaptation. Next up, TP says, since curse techniques are shaped from interpretation, could they be changed if a person's values or ideas change? And I'd say yes and no, because clearly we know that, Yuji's Cleave and Dismantle versus Sukuna's are completely different based on their interpretation and understanding of it. But within a specific individual, I don't think you could really completely change the way you interpret the technique, but you may be able to expand upon it, find new nuance of how you want to use it, maybe new extensions of it. So in that realm, I think yes, but not in the realm of like fundamentally changing it. Next up, Unyielding Might wanted to know where the One Piece videos went. And yes, a lot of people have been asking me this. So I actually had to private all of those videos because one of them got a copyright notice. And so I got paranoid and just took them all down to be safe. I do think they fall under fair use, but I'm just not going to risk it. So they're privated for now. I might try to like redo them a different way. And also moving forward, I will just be doing the arc reviews in a new way to hopefully avoid that altogether. Next up, Monday wants to know if I've thought about doing more in-depth video essays on certain concepts or character studies, and it's definitely something I've thought about. I'm continuing to think about ways I might branch out or try different pieces of content, so perhaps, and like speaking of the One Piece reviews, I don't know if you've seen any of those, but some of those are like almost an hour long, so I'm definitely open to that. It would just need to be the right idea. Next up, we got a two-parter from Ghost Toast. Y'all pause to read. The first half talks about how Gege likes to shine a spotlight on character flaws in order to tell us something about humanity. And honestly, I think this is one of Gege's strengths as a writer, and it's one of my favorite parts of JJK, so I totally agree. And then the second part down here talks about this idea of curses being born from sorcerers who die due to their regrets and stuff, and that we haven't really seen much of this in the story. You do point out Yuta and Rika, which is an example, but beyond that, we've also seen it with Maki and Naoya. And I don't know if we'd see this with Sukuna and Yuji, since the only reason this happens is if someone dies without cursed energy, and I expect both of them to die with cursed energy. Next up, we got this one from Sodam MOS, who says, I'm curious to what you think Yuji's ideals are now relative to his previous Cog mentality. And in case you didn't see it, Soda, I put out a video after 265 came out where I talk about the ideological battle between Yuji and Sukuna, so check that out because I go more in depth there. But essentially, I believe that Yuji realized that his whole Cog mentality and finding your role and having a good death was just not true, because now he understands that everyone has value in their life regardless of their role and regardless of their death. Also, I checked out your Kashimo OST, and it was awesome, man. Keep up the good work. Next up, Autofat wanted to know my thoughts on House of the Dragon, and I went ahead and refunded you because I have not seen it yet. And I know that's blasphemy, but Game of Thrones just left such a bad taste in my mouth that I haven't been ready to be hurt again. It had so much potential and they ruined all of it. So I've heard it's good. I know I need to check it out, but I just haven't yet. Now, funnily enough, literally as I'm sitting here recording, Arafat just sent in another question, and this one says, would a flashbang bypass Gojo's infinity? And this is really interesting because Gojo's infinity gets really contentious when we talk about light and stuff and light speed and all that jazz, but for my money, it depends on what aspect of the flashbang we're talking about. I'm assuming you mean like the blinding amounts of light. So in that case, I would say that if Gojo like didn't know what that was and wasn't prepared for what was about to happen, then he would be affected by it because light typically is allowed through his infinity. And you got to remember that he controls what's allowed through. So if for whatever reason Gojo wanted to block light from his infinity, he could, in my opinion. Again, contentious. But so if he knew that was coming, then I think he would be able to protect himself from it. But if you caught him off guard, then I believe Gojo would be similarly blinded, or at least affected. I won't say blinded because again, the six eyes are just crazy. And even if he was blinded in the sense that you and I are blinded, doesn't mean Gojo's still not going to be completely fine. Because again, the man wears blindfolds and blacked out sunglasses. He effectively cannot see in the same way that you and I would not be able to see. And yet, because of the six eyes, he's chill. So could the flashbang affect him in some manner? Yes, but I also think he could fully protect himself from it if he knew it was coming. Next up, we got this one from Deon Hammer, who also says that he picked up the manga after watching my videos. And again, I just take that as the highest compliment, so thank you so much for the kindness, man. But his question has to do with curse technique reversals. He wants to know if Yuta could perform the reversal of Kenjaku's technique in order to put Gojo back in his own body, essentially. And this is fascinating. I've actually never even considered what the reversal of Kenjaku's body swap might be. And, you know, it at least feels in the realm of possibility that the reversal could be, you know, returning the original contents back to the jar. But who knows, right? We, again, don't really see many reversals in this manga. Now, what's the reason for that? Did Gege just not want to go that direction? Does every technique not have a reversal necessarily? We don't really have the answer to that. But again, at least on a theoretical level, like I could see that happening. You know, again, for my money, a Gojo return will take the form of a small window similar to the Ghetto choke of Kenjaku, but this would certainly be fascinating. And then finally for this video, we've got this question from Les. Y'all can pause to read it, but it deals with Yuji's evolution. And he's specifically wondering if these recent chapters have showcased Yuji's understanding of subtraction as a sorcerer. And for those of you that don't recall, it was pointed out that to excel at subtraction is to excel at jujutsu, meaning like if you can find out ways to eliminate parts of jujutsu yet keep it intact, you're only going to become more efficient, more skilled, right? For example, getting rid of chanting or hand signs and yet still being able to perform the technique, you've found a shortcut, right? And so you're only getting that much better. You're, you know, kind of showing your genius at jujutsu if you are capable of those things. So I'll say that I don't think anything has explicitly pointed towards subtraction in these recent chapters. Like, I don't think we've seen any like hard examples of Yuji learning to have like found a shortcut or shaved time off of certain things, but that's largely because up until now he hasn't really had techniques. You know, he's had to fully rely on cursed energy and black flashes and that type of thing. So I don't really think we've been able to see him showcase any growth in subtraction up to this point. But that being said, this has all clearly been about his evolution and ascension. So no doubt that's been what these chapters have been trying to show us. Just explicitly in terms of subtraction, I'm not sure if we've seen anything like that yet. And then to your point about Wasuke's comment of babies remembering more than we think, and if that could come into play since we're on a trip down memory lane here, I would love that if so. And specifically, I would love it in reference to Sukuna, to find out more about his childhood and when he was a baby, and maybe even more about that whole circumstance where he did, you know, consume his brother in the womb. But in any case, if we got more light shed on that from Yuji or Sukuna, I would be here for it. Anyways, y'all, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you to everyone who sent in a question. I truly appreciate the support. And don't forget, we got leaks tomorrow night, so be sure you join the Discord and hang out with us for that. And also, our fan art competition is going on over there, and we've got a little less than a week to get your submissions in. So be sure to check that out as well. And finally, thank you guys for watching.